Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Well, Elon Musk is now the richest person on the planet.
More than half the satellites in space are owned and controlled by one man.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate.
He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
There is a reason the U.S. government is so reliant on him.
Elon Musk is a scam artist, and he's done nothing.
Anything he does is fascinating to people.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, October 8th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. The moment we've been waiting for is almost here. The grand unveiling of Elon's Robotaxi, the self-driving droid car that is supposed to push Tesla far into the future and make it, according to Elon, a multi-trillion-dollar company. Now, a launch like this would normally dominate the show. Perhaps it'd be the only thing we talk about. But over the weekend, Elon jumped onto stage with Donald Trump, lashing himself ever more tightly to the Trump train as the election approaches. And so we just gotta get into that. And to help us, we're gonna bring in a special guest, Jacob Silverman, an independent journalist who covers the tech industry. But we will start with that Robotaxi launch. To talk about what we can expect from the big event Thursday night, we have our regulars, Dana Hull and Max Chafkin. Hey there.
Hey, good to be here.
Hi, David.
And we also are beaming in from London, our global autos editor, a very busy man, Craig Trudell. Craig, how you doing?
Happy Robotaxi week.
Happy Robotaxi week to you, sir. Okay, so, Craig, we are just a couple of days away. I can sense the excitement in your voice, by the way. All the way across the pond, I can just feel it. No jumping around, though, in the studio over there. Our studio can't take that. What do we know? Remind us. What do we know so far about this Robotaxi, the cyber cab, as Elon calls it, and what's he been promising, and what are the general expectations for it?
Well, I think about, this time of year, everyone talks about, debates and playing the quote unquote expectations game, right? Where you try to, under promise and then over deliver, right? I think Governor Walz, his people were talking about, he's not such a great debater. He's very nervous. Elon isn't playing that game. He is posting on X about this being, one for the history books, and agreeing with one of his super fans that, this is going to be the most significant moment for Tesla since the unveiling of the Model 3. That was a super important moment in the history of Tesla. So, he is setting expectations awfully high here.
He's in full on hype mode.
He's in hype mode. He's in salesmanship mode. And honestly, you guys have been talking about on the podcast about the idea that it's been quite effective, right? It's been driving the stock price up for months now. And so, the expectations going into this event, I would say, are hugely elevated. There are some analysts maybe who are starting to come out with notes to kind of, maybe temper things a bit so that they can sort of, declare what a surprise everything was. But I think, you look at what Elon has been saying and posting, it's been anything but, lowering expectations.
Now, Dana, remind us, he's been promising the Robotaxi, the Cybercab. I don't know, by the way, when he changed from Robotaxi to Cybercab, but he's been promising it for a long time. According to his initial predictions way back when were we going to get the Cybercab?
I mean, he made a big pitch to Wall Street investors that 2020 was going to be the year of the Robotaxi. Here it is, late 2024, and we're going to have this unveiling Thursday night. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that it's not just the Robotaxi event, people. It's called We Robot. And so I predict that we're going to see a Robotaxi. We're going to hear about the fleet. We're going to see Optimus do something. Like this is like sort of beyond just the Robotaxi. They're really pitching this as like the big event that's going to kind of explain to, the plebes why Tesla has this huge advantage, and they're calling the event our official unveiling of the future of autonomy. So it goes beyond just this Robotaxi. It's like it's much bigger in their minds.
So they're going to flex, Max, all their technological prowess, the technical prowess that the market says makes the company infinitely more valuable than its old school peers. and I guess we'll see.
Can you unveil the future? I don't think you can. And I think that language, right there kind of hints at one of the problems. This is not a product launch because there is no product. Like, they can say that they are launching a cyber cab, but there's a reason this event is being held on a Hollywood soundstage.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's going to be very impressive. I'm sure we're going to see something that looks very much like a taxi driving around streets that look very much like streets. But of course, you can't just do this in the real world, because in the real world it is not legal. And leave aside the questions about whether Tesla can come anywhere to achieving this from a technological basis, which I think are big questions. We tend to think about the really successful Elon Musk launches, the Model 3 launch Dana brought up, the Cybertruck launch, also I think a very successful launch, notwithstanding the broken glass. But of course, there have been times when things have disappointed, and in particular around autonomy.
Yeah. Now, Max, let me interrupt for a second, because we have curated over the years some Musk highlights from some of these events. Let's listen to them now.
The car can do almost anything. You can pick your favorite color, and it looks like a beautiful sculpture on the wall.
We expect to have the first operating robotaxis next year.
The goal is to have electric or solar roofs that look better than a normal roof. The new Tesla Roadster will be the fastest production car ever made, period.
Man, listening to that stuff makes me want to jump around here. Now, but Craig, so you've gone back and looked through, well, first of all, I think you were there for many of them, for many of these events, and you recall some of the greatest hits and the biggest crash and burns. Like, what do you typically get concretely out of these events, and how does the market tend to react to them?
I mean, Musk, you can say what you will about his political leanings of late, or his, sense of humor. Sometime it can be, not everyone's cup of tea, but he is a showman. I think you guys have talked about this on the podcast in the past. Will boast about, being able to deliver a car in rapid fashion. Did so with the Model X in 2012 that launched a couple years late. The Model 3 handover in 2017, I just remember him talking about, warning of production hell. I guess he was right there, but I think he both is able to hype up the product that he is bringing to market, and also, really get people excited about what's coming, right? I think back to 2017 when, toward the end of the year, they were showing the Semi, and surprised everybody by showing the next generation Roadster. That was their first vehicle ever. He said on stage, people have asked us for a long time, when are you going to make a new Roadster? We are making it now. He's still not making that Roadster. He's not even really making that Semi either. That is in pilot production. So he will make a lot of big pronouncements, big statements, big predictions. I mentioned his sense of humor. I do want to give him credit that he has said that Tesla specializes in making the impossible merely late. I think that's a pretty good line.
I just want to note that, I think for the stock, there's a question of if do people sell on the news because the news could be less hypey than what people are anticipating. But if you actually go to the event, people are super into it. These diehard fans, they are flying in from all over the country. They're begging for plus ones. To be clear, Tesla's inviting Wall Street analysts, big investors, and their chosen influencers, plus some randos to go to this thing. So all of the influencers who are part of the Musk sycophantic echo chamber are all going to be there. And to be in the room with this guy who some people think is the Thomas Edison of our time, it is enthralling for people. They are oh my God, I got to see Elon Musk in person. And that's what they live for. And it's a little bit like a tent revival situation where just being in the same room with him and hearing him and being able to scream his name, it's very religious almost. And I don't think you can sort of negate that. When the Model 3 was unveiled, I was there when he did that, along with, Mary Nichols, the head of the California Air Resources Board. And there was electricity in the room because people really felt like you were seeing the needle move. And I can imagine that there will be a similar vibe, at this AI event, except Elon, I don't get the sense that Elon is preparing for his remarks that much. I mean, he's on the campaign trail with Donald Trump, right? So in terms of showmanship, I don't think he's practiced his patter. I don't get the sense that he's hunkered down doing product launch prep the way that most CEOs do. And so if he just sort of like rolls in late and is off the cuff and like shambles around and makes some jokes about how the future is autonomy, like I don't think Wall Street's going to be super keen on that.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet is that this event is at 7 p.m. Pacific time, so that's 10 p.m. Eastern time. This is a late event, and this is how Elon Musk likes it, right? He likes these things, as Dana and Craig are hinting, as to feel like parties, but it's unlikely to me that this is going to have a big media impact, even no matter what he does, because of how they've decided to kind of do the theater of it. And I've been sitting here trying to think about, well, what could Elon announce that would be perceived as a positive
What
surprise?
does success at the event look like?
So I think, okay, success would look like awesome design. Does this thing somehow just blow you away? That would be one thing. Number two, and this is more important, some sort of indication that they have a deal in place with some municipality anywhere in the world to deploy this thing in any kind of time frame that is like soonish, like, but if we end this with just like, here's a cool product, but there's no plan for deployment, I think the reaction is going to be poor, because I think Elon has done so much to make it seem like this is happening like right now, that if the truth is it's happening 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, that's going to be processed as a big disappointment.
Craig first, and then Dana, the same question to you. What does success look like for you, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Max. I think hard and fast plans for deployment to me is a must. And I think that's where this gets really tricky, right? Because we've heard him literally year after year say that, his robotaxis are just around the corner. And even, as Dana alluded to earlier, back in 2019, he was telling everybody that their Tesla, the Tesla that, was in their driveway that they had already bought, was on the verge of being a robotaxi. We know that there is no Tesla robotaxi on the road. What is going to be shown in LA Thursday night is going to be, prototypes. I do think that, Dana, scooped a few months back that, this event, after all, got delayed because he wanted to make a design change. I think that speaks to this idea that this thing is not baked. And, I think the question will be, does this guy end up having any credibility with Wall Street when, in 2019, as Dana alluded to, he said, we expect to have the first operating robotaxis next year, and then has proceeded to predict that over and over again ad nauseum.
Well, Craig, I don't know if he's got credibility with Wall Street or Wall Street analysts per se, but clearly, judging from the reaction in the stock market of the last few months when he made his grand pivot to the robotaxi, i.e. the stock has popped 50%, I guess he seems to have still that credit in the bank with the broader investor base out there. Dana, what does success look like for you?
Well, he has to give people rides. I mean, he can't just like stand on the stage and like pull the sheet off of this, 2-seat robotaxi. Like he actually has to give investors like rides. They have to be able to, and I think they're going to have to show like the Tesla app, and people are going to have to like experience hailing it and then like riding around in it. I mean, that said, they are doing this on this kind of closed course, and there's a lot of questions about whether they pre-mapped the route or whatever, but you have to have people actually experience it, because Tesla's trying to sort of do two things at once. They have sold current Tesla owners on the idea that eventually, with the flip of a switch, your car will be self-driving. And then simultaneously, they are now unveiling dedicated, purpose-built robotaxi that Tesla's going to run itself. And, the whole idea is that it's going to be this combination of Uber and Airbnb where, like, you can drive your car yourself, or, like, if you're on vacation or asleep, you can, like, lend your car to this Tesla fleet and it'll make money for you when you're not around. And so they kind of have to differentiate and explain to people how this is actually going to work. But I think that it's not a success unless, like, the big investors actually get to ride in this thing.
And just a note of caution. Getting a ride in a quote-unquote robotaxi on a closed course at a demo is not anywhere near the same thing as a robotaxi being deployed in public. So, like, I think Dan is right. If they don't give anyone rides, that will be a disappointment. But even if they do give rides, everyone needs to watch that with a with a big grain of salt, because Google has been doing this for like 15 years. Other companies, me and Craig and Dana, we've all sat through demos on real roads with robotaxis before. Like, this has been going on for a very long time. It is not novel to be able to have a robotaxi demo on a closed course, even though I am so certain that Elon Musk will make it seem novel when he announces it on the 10th.
The point is that Tesla does not have a permit from the California Department of Motor Vehicles to deploy any kind of robotaxi on public roads in California, full stop. Like, they do not have a permit. So the only way that they can demonstrate this is to do it on private land at the discretion of the owner. And they're doing it at the Warner Brothers studio in Burbank, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, Musk has done demos at Hollywood studios before. He famously unveiled the solar roof on the set of, Hollywood. What was it called?
Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives. So just the fact that it's happening on on a private lot where, they can control the variables of what is in the built environment is really telling.
Now, Craig, this big event is late here, East Coast time. It's either super late London time or super early, depending on the way you look at it, 3 a.m. I'm guessing you're setting your alarm for 2:55. You're going to pound a couple cups of espresso. And then, Craig, you shall play Tesla Cyber what? What is this thing again? The Cyber Cab launch bingo. Are you not going to play bingo? And to play bingo, Craig, Dana seems to have a card ready for us.
Well, so to back up for a bit, listeners of the, regular listeners of the pod know that we often make an earnings call bingo. And this time around, instead of earnings call bingo, we're doing Robotaxi edition bingo. And, Musk uses a lot of stock phrases over and over again. So we've got the bingo card, and you'll be able to download it at some point. But I bet Craig and Max and David, you can probably guess some of the words.
Come on, Max.
Tesla is an AI company. I think he's going to say that.
There we go. Craig, what do you got?
There is a square called that very simply just says AI.
I got feature complete, March of the Nines.
Ooh, those are good.
Gosh.
They're not on the card, though.
Yeah,
alas.
Regulatory approval.
We do have regulators.
Regulators, yeah.
Not optimistic enough for approval.
We have some other phrases are scalable, cost per mile, compute, bus ticket, end-to-end. We also have horse. Max, you want to explain the why horse often comes up on our bingo cards? Do you remember the backstory on that?
I feel like Elon, there have been a few horse-related incidents, I believe, but I think what this refers to is the fact that Elon has said that buying a car without this technology would be like buying a horse.
Can I throw one other animal one other animal related card? How about boy who cried FSD instead of boy who cried wolf? Because Elon has called himself the boy who cried full self-driving and was wrong. Yeah.
This is why you're not part of the committee that creates the bingo card. You're demanding squares that are just too hard. No one's going to get bingo. America and the world more broadly, they want to get bingo. They want to say bingo. I don't know. All right, listen, this is what we're going to do. First thing Friday morning, Craig, we're going to have you back on. You're going to give us your impressions of the grand unveiling of the Cyber Cab, and perhaps we'll hear a little bit from Max and Dana as well. So, Craig, we say goodbye to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, now the Cyber Cab launch should have been the biggest news story of the week for Elon, but then Elon showed up with Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, and it got a little wacky. Let's actually listen to the tape when Trump introduces him on stage.
His name is Elon Musk. He saved free speech. He created so many different great things. Where is he? Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. Come here. Take over, Elon. Yes, take over.
Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
Jacob, welcome to the show. We appreciate having you on. Now, you are an independent journalist and currently writing a book about the tech industry and right-wing politics for Bloomberg, which is all perfect for this segment. Did you watch this either live or subsequently, Jacob, on Saturday?
Yes, I did. I caught it later. I wasn't able to watch it live.
And your thoughts as you are watching this scene?
Well, of course, I think the screenshotted images, the still images of Musk flying in the air and it awkwardly with minimal vertical leap and his belly showing might be the one that lingers most, or maybe him leaning forward, kind of leering at Trump with this sinister handshake. I think those are the things that a lot of people will take away rather than anything that he said. I mean, he later said, I believe on Tucker Carlson, that he claimed to have improvised most of that, and perhaps it showed. The biggest takeaway for me is just the scene and the setting, that this is a fairly big event for Trump. He's coming back to the horrifying event for him of the attempted assassination, and right there next to him is the richest man in the world, who just a few months ago was a little bit restrained in his support, at least not totally open and opening the floodgates of money.
Yeah. Now, Max, why the jumping?
Well, the jumping, that I cannot answer. And like Jacob is saying, the memes have been fierce around like these gestures and the jump and everything. My reaction here was just like, wow, he is all in. You know, this is a guy who is, you know, really putting everything, his entire identity and a lot of his money behind this very, very polarizing reelection effort.
Yeah, and Dana, I will admit I didn't watch it. It was Saturday afternoon. I was busy gambling, so you will forgive me. But, you know, I did, in catching up afterwards, I had this sort of the same thought. I believe there is a moment or two in the book, in the Walter Isaacson biography of Musk, in which, you know, there's either Musk says it directly or Isaacson very much gets the sense that at some point, periodically, I just say, F it, and I just Musk, just put all my chips in the table and I'm just going to let it ride. Kind of seems what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, okay, so it's one thing to start a PAC to support President Trump. It's another thing to sort of publicly endorse Trump. And then it's like a third thing to like campaign with him. I mean, no other CEO does that because, you know, people like hedge their bets and they don't want to be on the wrong side if your side loses. But I think that Elon Musk has made the calculation that this is a very close race. He's already poured millions of dollars into this campaign. He's now very focused on Pennsylvania. As a UPenn graduate, you know, he's like, I know the state. He's like campaigning with Trump. He's going to do more events with Trump. And I think for him, it's like he wants his guy to win, and he somehow thinks that he is value add. But I think what was most disturbing to me was this whole dark MAGA thing. I mean, it's like a dark vision of the future. And Musk is becoming very dark, like saying if Trump doesn't win, this will be the last election that we ever have. I think that it just really solidifies Musk's reputation going forward. Like people will not remember him as the guy who was trying to help solve the climate crisis with electric cars. They will remember him as the richest person in the world who threw in all of his chits with Trump and stood on stage with him wearing like a dark MAGA hat.
And to that point, he actually, I've now seen, appears in ads for Kamala Harris as someone that they want to very much link to Trump. Jacob, Dana mentioned just now how unusual it is for a business executive of his rank to campaign with the presidential candidate. And I actually checked in with our DC crew, and they don't have any recollection of having seen it in recent history. I suspect it's a fairly risky gambit, is it not?
I think so. I think, you know, there is some precedent here. Even at that event, one thing I did notice was that I believe John Paulson, the hedge funder, warmed up the crowd or spoke briefly.
Well, that must have been a barn burner of a speech.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why it hasn't been circulating on social media. But, you know, that is representative of sort of the plutocracy that is part and parcel of Trump and the backdrop behind him. But on the other hand, you're exactly right. There's been no one of this media ubiquity, of this level of power and wealth and influence. And Musk seems to understand, or at least has been joking about with Tucker Carlson, that there is some risk here. He's a major government contractor. This has been brought up by numerous people, including Tucker Carlson. And there are, I think, questions about some of the donations and any campaign finance issues here, or even the data collection that's been conducted by America PAC. that's being investigated, I believe, by some state election officials. So there's all kinds of potential exposure for someone like him.
We actually have that clip right now. Let's listen to it.
If he loses, man, what?
You're fucked, dude. I'm fucked. If he loses, I'm fucked.
It does seem that way.
I mean, I think he's joking, but also not joking, right? I mean,
nothing funny about a joke.
There are a swirl of federal investigations, and I think these comments do speak to the fact that he's bought in. Jacob mentioned a couple of things that also happened alongside this appearance, one of which was the Carlson interview. The other is that Elon announced this kind of big push to collect names for a mailing list. He's going to pay $47 per person, per registered voter in a swing state that you refer. And this is significant. People have asked sort of questions about, well, what, does this potentially violate, election laws and stuff? I seriously doubt it does. But I think what it does signal to me is that Elon Musk has ambitions to be a political player, maybe in the long term. I mean, one of the things about showing up at this thing, at a Trump event, is there's sort of no going back from it, right? It's going to be very difficult for Elon Musk to sort of de-partisan himself.
Yeah, if this were sort of a more run-of-the-mill John McCain kind of, candidate, perhaps, but if someone of this ilk, Donald Trump, and the polarizing effect he has in the
we've seen it happen, but the combination of showing up at the events, putting all this money, but the fact that he's spending potentially a substantial amount of money building this mailing list. So if you do the math, 47, he's saying he wants 1 million names times $47. That's $47 million. Buying a $47 million email list, obviously that would be useful to the Trump campaign to potentially turn out voters. It could be an asset going forward, right? Like having a massive mailing list of Trump-aligned registered voters in swing states would give Elon a potential to be a power broker going forward, no matter who wins or loses this election.
All right, we're going to move on to the main topic. Jacob, again, way back when we first thought we'd have you on, we were going to have you on just to talk about X and how you managed, very impressively, to get a judge to unseal the names of all the investors who bought the company alongside Elon. Tell us what you found.
Sure. So thanks to the help of RCFP, or Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, I filed a motion to intervene in one of the many lawsuits that Elon Musk and X are facing since the acquisition. And in one of these lawsuits, this is related to employment issues and basically people suing the company who were let go. They had to file a list of shareholders, X did, and they chose to do so under seal. They wanted to keep it secret. Now, these kinds of things happen all the time, and so do these kinds of motions to intervene, but this was something that I had been looking for and wondering about, was who was actually the money behind Musk taking over the company. We had some sense. There were SEC filings and public statements that gave us some idea, but nothing with the sort of force of a legal filing like this. And it actually worked rather quickly. Within about a month over the summer, a judge ruled in our favor. I think there are some surprises there, and I think it gives a good sense of who Musk is turning to for money, and also the differences actually between what he says to some people, and in both in public and private, and then actually how this played out.
And the list is pretty wild, because I remember when it came out, we were all I was like, oh my God, Jacob got the list. I mean, but it's like this rogues gallery of foreign money, but then Fidelity, but then Sean Combs. So Jacob, do you want to maybe run through the highlights of who actually the investors are?
Sure. I mean, and some of these were mentioned in passing before, Sean Combs, the recently indicted P. Diddy, is definitely on there. We don't necessarily know for what amount, but he has a company called Sean Combs Capital, which is maybe a reminder that so many of these celebrities are now investors. There are, one thing that I really noticed was the difference between those texts that were released as part of the Delaware court proceedings that kind of convinced Musk to go through with the proceedings, I think. But in those texts, he was telling, David Sachs said he was in, but he's not on the actual list, unless there are a few companies that can't identify their owners. Maybe one of those is his. Some other close Musk associates aren't on there. In the text, Musk was constantly telling people that the deal was oversubscribed. Larry Ellison would say, "Oh, I'm in for $2 billion if you want," but then we know he was in, but it doesn't seem to be oversubscribed because he has people like this guy Andrea Strappa, who's kind of a semi-obscure Italian cybersecurity researcher, and just seems like a guy Musk talks to on X. That's sort of this category that I call the inexplicably rich. And then there are also companies like Fidelity, which is a huge financial firm, invested in more than 24 funds. But then also you have kind of lower tier financial firms, I would say, and also even venture capitalists who, through no fault of their own, but typically do smaller deals like less than $500,000. You just wouldn't expect that kind of more obscure or smaller money to be part of this, especially when Musk was telling his billionaire friends, hey, this is oversubscribed, but I'll let you in. So
obviously he was having to work a lot harder to get people to put up the cash than he was intimating. Now, there also, there was a list of a few prominent, or at least one prominent Saudi name.
One of the largest or the largest outside shareholder of Twitter when it was a public company was Prince Al-Walid bin Talal from Saudi Arabia. He's listed 3 separate times in the official ownership list as Kingdom Holding Company and then under his own name, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. The important thing there, I think, is one, he was always close, of course, to the Saudi regime, but a few years ago, MBS, the notoriously violent Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, imprisoned a few hundred notables, including this prince, and had a lot of them tortured and forced to turn over their assets. This was part of what was called an anti-corruption purge. So I think that kind of relationship with an authoritarian nation state is a big part of the X story right now.
People should read the piece that Jacob wrote about this in the Baffler because it's really funny. It's got a lot of jokes and kind of like Dana kind of hinted at, breaks these people into categories. But when you take it in the totality, I mean, it is like a weird collection of supporters and enablers, which we have known about, but which kind of encompasses a lot of sketch, a lot of foreign money, a lot of people who we don't quite know where their money comes from. Binance, which, his founder was pled guilty and just got out of prison, is a major investor. And fine, that's kind of how capitalism works. But like, this is a company that is playing a very significant political role. It's not just a social media site. It's a major way that especially people on the right are consuming their news. And we've had these discussions so many times over the last 10 years or so that it's almost trite or cliched to bring it up. But it definitely seems like a lot of people you wouldn't necessarily want to have super close to election advertising or messaging about voting or telling people that the vote is rigged, as we're seeing over and over again on X. So it's just something to keep an eye on, I think. This is probably not the right place to say this, but this whole story about Elon and politics, the thing that I've found most amusing and fun is that Politico reported that Elon is planning on doing more events with Trump, having even more political engagement.
More jumping.
And it mentioned that he went to a Steelers game over the weekend.
That to be clear, that I did watch.
He's a big football fan. He was waving I think it's called a terrible towel. But this Politico story, sourced to I don't even know who, but somebody familiar or whatever, said that he's also a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's for all the teams. He's going to be extremely relatable to Pennsylvanians over the next month.
I've been joking around, so we confirmed that Musk is going to do more events, and I've been joking around, what is the next campaign event? Is Musk going to go to a Sheetz or a Wawa? Is he going to yins around and drink Rolling Rock beer? What is the penultimate Pennsylvania campaign event to do?
He's going to go to the old vet, the Link, and he's going to watch the Eagles.
Hilariously, it seemed like the chief point of evidence here is that he attended the Super Bowl game featuring the Eagles in Rupert Murdoch's owner's box. Yeah. Like all great Eagles fans, of course, he has been in the owner's box with Rupert Murdoch.
All I'll say this is knowing that he was at the game and having bet and lost on the Steelers, I needed him to wave that towel and shout and holler a little bit more loudly to get the Steelers home. Listen, Jacob, we're going to wrap it up there. When your book is out, sir, please let us know, and we will absolutely have you back on.
That'd be great. And thanks for this. It was fun.
Max, Dana, thanks as well as always.
Great to be here.
Of course. Nice to meet you, Jacob.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Naomi Shaban and Rehan Harmansi are our senior editors. The idea for this very show also came from Rehan. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact checks. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks, as always, to our supporter, Joel Weber. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next time.